Good afternoon, everyone. I'm C.Y. Huang. You are watching Smart Gay. Today, we have the honor of inviting a foreign guest, a very unique guest from Israel. She is a famous entrepreneur, and she is also starting a renewable energy company that is cooperating with one of my companies, Lianda companies in Taiwan, promoting wave energy. And she is extremely busy and famous. Today, she is coming to Taiwan to attend the Energy Week. And we have a big Energy Week, energy show this week. We are very honored to invite and introduce Ms. Inna Braverman, CEO of EcoWave Power. Inna, thank you and welcoming you to my show.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah, so today, this is your first time, I understand, to Taiwan. Is Asia. I know you've been all over to United States and Europe, but Asia, have you been coming to Asia often?
So I visited some countries in Asia, but it's my first time in Taiwan, and it's from what I've seen a little bit, and I'm a little jet lagged still, but from what I've seen, it's a very beautiful country with very nice people, very friendly people, so I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, and to start with, the reason for Inna to be here is because we have a joint venture, we have a partnership in doing wave energy, and that is a new renewable energy technology we are introducing into Taiwan. Taiwan is very big on renewable energy right now because of the tremendous power demand, in AI, in semiconductor, and we also have a little bit power shortage. So the government is trying very hard to develop renewable energy. We used to have solar and offshore wind, but the government the President William Lai is exploring other new alternatives, geothermal, the biodiesel, and then plus the wave energy. These are some of the options that we are talking about. So I want to start because you have a very unique background. You are from Ukraine, which is now in the spotlight in the world right now. And then, but you went to Israel, and Israel is another interesting country. Oh, that reminded me, the two countries you related with your past are all in war right now. But share with us your background.
So I was born in Ukraine in 1986, and when I was 4 years old, my family decided to immigrate from the Ukraine to Israel.
Why?
Because I think two main reasons. One, there was some anti-Semitism in Ukraine still back then. So my family is Jewish, so they always had a dream to go to the Jewish country, which is Israel. And the second reason, which I think was probably the main reason, is the fact that I was born on the 11th of April 1986, and 2 weeks after I was born, on the 26th of April 1986, the Chernobyl nuclear reactor exploded, which was the largest in history nuclear disaster. And I was one of the babies that got hurt from the negative effects of the explosion.
A lot of people got hurt.
A lot of people got hurt. A lot of people are still getting hurt because according to all the scientists, it will take 100 years to clean up, and only 38 years have passed since the explosion. So I actually had a respiratory arrest. I stopped breathing, and my mom approached my crib, and she looked down. She saw I'm blue and pale and not breathing, and she forgot she's a nurse from the nerves. So she ran to my dad, and she was like, oh my God, the baby is dead. What do I do? So he said, you're a nurse, do something. And then she remembered she's a nurse, and she gave me a mouth-to-mouth resuscitation that saved my life. I don't remember any of that, but growing up already in Israel, every time we had family gatherings for holidays or anything, everybody would say wow, that's so cool, you got a second chance in life. So I grew up being very proud, I got a second chance in life. I should really do something good with it for the world. And from Ukraine, we went to we immigrated to a super small town in the north of Israel called Akko. So growing up in such a small town, you don't really have the chance to make a big impact, because what do? You don't know anybody, you don't have the funds, you don't have the contacts. So when I was older, I decided to go study in Haifa University political science in the hope of becoming this great politician that would make peace in the Middle East. That didn't work so far.
So you studied in political science?
Yes, I did. And I wanted, again, to change really the politics of Israel.
Change the world.
starting with Israel, peace in the Middle East, for now, it didn't work. But when I finished university, I found out that there was like no lineup of politicians waiting to hire a young lady straight from university. So I went to work as my first job as an English Hebrew translator for a renewable energy company. And there I really discovered like the whole, let's call it, exciting world of renewable energies. And whereas solar and wind energy were already packed with competition, everybody were doing it. You couldn't innovate too much. Wave energy was something that, according to the World Energy Council, can provide twice the amount of electricity that the world produces now, but nobody was able to make it happen. Nobody was able to make it commercialized. And there was big companies that are trying, like with a lot of money, with a lot of resources, human resources, and nobody made it happen. So I was 24, I didn't have the money, I didn't have the technical background, and I didn't have the contact.
Amazing.
I said I can do wave energy.
How brave you were, but you're from political science background, you are not an engineer, and you started a company at the age of 24. How did you convince investors, about your dream? That's amazing, because all my life, in the last 37 years as an investment banker, I help people to raise funds, but I don't remember I see, entrepreneur as brave as you are, and started, how did you raise your first money, the angel round of money?
So first, it's brave, but I would also say it's innocent, because when you're 24 years old, you're passionate about something and you want to go conquer the world. So it's also a lot of innocence. And basically, when I got the idea, I basically did research before I got any funds individually. And I found out what did the other companies do wrong? Where did they fail? And I found out that all of them failed in the same 5 points. So I thought to myself, okay, if I can solve these 5 points, because the technology for wave energy works, it's just that it was too expensive and breaking down and not insurable, not environmentally friendly and difficult to connect to the grid. So I said, if I can solve it with an idea, then, we're on the wave, kind of. And so I thought of my own ideas, but I couldn't do anything with it. As I said, I didn't have the financial resources or anything like that. So I kind of put in the beginning the idea aside as not realistic, because to build a power station cost money. And forget building a power station, I didn't even have the funds to register a patent for the power station, which is a big problem. And then one day I went to a social event in Israel, and there was a guy that came and sat next to me. And in Israel, he asked me in English, what's your passion? And I said, wave energy, that's what I was doing, that's what I was researching. And the guy looked a little bit hippie, he had a lot of bracelets here and ripped jeans. And I said wave energy, and I just talked with him for no apparent reason, just to be polite. And it turned out that the hippie guy is a serial entrepreneur. His name is David Leb. And he ended up investing the first $1 million at EcoWave Power following the conversation. So that was kind of a match made in business heaven. And, that's how I got the first investment for EcoWave Power.
Amazing, amazing. I hope I could, meet somebody like that. It is a remarkable achievement. But back to, why renewable energy and why wave energy in the first place? Why you didn't start something, other venture, fintech, biotech? Why renewable energy and why wave energy? What gave you the idea?
So renewable energy, I think all of us know that you have climate change, you have very negative impact of the way that currently the world produces electricity. According to the United Nations, 60% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions are directly derived from the way that the world is producing its energy. And just to kind of make it clear, right now 80% of the world's energy is produced by fossil fuels and only 20% by renewable. This is not enough, and we can see very severe impacts that climate change brings. You have shortened lifespan for people, you have fires in Brazil, you have floods, things are happening that are not good. And even to be honest, when I say about Chernobyl, everybody wow, Chernobyl, it was so scary because there was a big boom and there was a fire. It came with all the right visuals to scare people. But climate change is kind of a quiet enemy, because climate change so far killed much more people in the world than Chernobyl ever did. But still people are remembering the fire and the big boom. So this is something that I think that's important to remember, why renewable is important for us and for the future generations. Why wave energy? Because according to all the scientists, wave energy is the largest type of renewable energy from everything. Solar is amazing, but you have the night, you have winter, you have cloud coverage, you cannot produce electricity. Wind energy is great, but wind is mostly dominant in most of the world, early in the morning or late at night, when the population usage is actually at its lowest. So you need a lot of accumulators in order to be able to kind of stabilize and sell it in the right hours. And wave energy is the least intermittent source of electricity. It's the most stable source of electricity. It can even act to stabilize solar and wind using the same grid connection and saving money. And in suitable locations, wave energy can generate 24/7, around the clock. And one more thing is that actually 2/3 of the world population are currently living 200 kilometers away from a coastline. So with this type of population distribution, and with the trends that more and more people in the world are immigrating towards the coastline, we understand that wave energy is undeniable, even for easy transmission of electricity.
Yeah, but still, it is amazing, because Israel is not surrounded by ocean. But I know, you graduate from University of Haifa, which is next to the Mediterranean. So, but still, the fact that you can think of, the wave energy, and not somebody from Taiwan, so it is unbelievable. Somebody like you, can think of that. But still, to get a startup, not from engineering background. Where and how did you assemble your team, the technical team?
So in the beginning, when I got the first investment, it's the first investment I got. I was 24, so I was really afraid.
$1 million is a lot of money for 24.
Exactly, and I was really afraid that I'm not gonna spend it right. I wanted to de-risk it as much as possible. So what I decided to do back then, it was 2011 when I just opened the company, is to go back to Ukraine, to the same city I was born. Because in the Ukraine, you have very smart engineers.
Absolutely.
And with a lower cost than in Israel, because Israel is very expensive in terms of engineering costs. And I made a competition there between 300 engineers and chose a team of 5 that can actually take my idea and make it into reality, make it into blueprints and sketches and so on. And even my first testing of the equipment was done in the Hydromechanical Institute in Kiev. So, we have also in the Technion, for example, in Israel, we have very impressive wave pool that you can test, but it's very expensive to test there. In Ukraine, I was able to test for very cost-efficient price, up to the point that I knew that.
So how many people you assemble? 5, 10?
5 people in the beginning.
Wow.
Yes. 5 people, all engineers.
But it's all your idea, but you ask them, say this is your idea, and then you ask them to design it.
To do the sketches, to do the blueprints, because again, I can't sketch obviously, but to make it into a reality.
So this is, I think very few people notice that. Actually, is you link the Ukraine and a lot of smart people from Ukraine, the scientists, mathematicians, the engineers, and even I know today some of the good software company before the war. Actually, a lot of people are from Ukraine. So tell us about but you say you started a company in 2011, so it's been over the decade now. Perhaps you go through with us, the several stages, like the first 3 years, the 5 years, and then the next. So how many stages and what stages are you in right now?
So I think the beginning of the company, for me, it was most important to get expertise in the technology. Because you don't want to be in a position that you put something in the market and that you sell something that is not ready, right? Because you want to put something that, will be kind of the best. So the first years were mostly R&Ds. I hired mostly engineers. We didn't do sales too much and marketing too much because we wanted to finish the product. We started actually the product development with the testing in the Hydromechanical Institute in Kiev. Then we continued to test in the Crimean Peninsula. Back then, Crimean Peninsula was part of Ukraine. So we tested there a first real conditions experiment with only 2 floaters. Then by luck, we didn't know that, the problem is going to happen between Russia and Ukraine. So by luck, 1 or 2 weeks before the situation there happened, we took out the equipment and we got an agreement with the port of Jaffa in Israel, and we installed it the first time in Israel.
So the first confrontation back then, what was which year? The 8 years?
I don't remember exactly, but when Putin took Crimean Peninsula, we had our equipment there 2 weeks before Putin went into Crimean Peninsula, we had the equipment there.
Okay.
And then in the same time, we already wanted
You're a lucky woman. I need to follow you.
Very lucky, yes.
I need to follow you.
Yes, they say in business you need to have brains, you need to have passion and persistence, but luck is your best friend. usually. So so we took out the equipment. Again, we didn't know anything is going to happen. We already opened offices in Israel. We had already engineers in Israel, so we wanted the equipment to be in Israel. And we got an agreement with the Port of Jaffa. So then we tested there for 6 years. We had an off-grid power station. Like we wanted to test the hydraulic ingredients, the floaters and so on. Back then there was no legislation in Israel that enabled us to connect wave energy to the grid, so it didn't exist. So the first time that we did a grid connected project was actually in Gibraltar in 2016. In May 2016 it was launched. This is our first experience with really like connecting to a national electrical grid. It went well. We used the generators from Siemens and the inverters from ABB, so they supported us, in the grid connection process. And slowly we started improving how the technology works. So in the beginning, for example, we were able to reach, like in the first year of operation, about 30% of the energy that we forecasted for the site. And in the last year of operation in Gibraltar, we already reached 73% of the energy forecasted for the site. We also were able to significantly decrease the OPEX. Because, when we started operating a power station, like who knows how to operate a power station that's grid connection? It's the first time you're doing it, and you don't have other companies that are doing it. So you can't just copy somebody else's way. So it took us time to learn. So we started with an OPEX that was quite high. It was like 18% of the CAPEX. And in the last year, it decreased to 3.2% of the CAPEX, which is already good, because in the world, it's between 1 to 8% for OPEX of power stations. So we learned a lot on the Gibraltar power station. And then we also signed partnership with EDF. EDF is
from France.
Yeah, Électricité de France, the French national electrical company. And they, together with the government of Israel...
So that was 2016?
Close. Like we signed an MOU in 2016, and then it took us time to sign a JV agreement. We actually entered the JV agreement. We opened a company called EWP EDF1 that we own 50%. And this company basically was responsible for building the first grid-connected power station in Israel. So 50% of the funding came from EDF and 50% from the Israeli government, from the Israeli Energy Ministry, which recognized our technology as pioneering technology. And now actually in August 2023, the power station that actually your team visited in Israel during construction, I think it was still in early days, it wasn't connected to the grid yet then, but it became now the first power station, wave energy power station in the history of Israel that ever connected to the national electrical grid. And it's super cool because people now in proximity to the port, because they're the first users, can actually watch TV or turn their washing machine with the power of the waves. So it's, it's nice.
I want to ask you, when you started this, but obviously there are other people explore wave energy, so how do you compare yourself with competition? You are not the only solution in town, but you are the first or the way ahead in other people really making it happen. Why was that? And what made you successful and other people fail?
So you're right. There's about 200 companies in the world trying to develop wave energy, and 99% of those companies are offshore. Offshore means 4 or 5 kilometers into the sea. I think the fact that they went into the offshore from the start kind of didn't play for their favor, to be honest. Because in the offshore, for a new technology, one, it's super expensive. You need ships, you need divers, you need underwater mooring, you need cables. It breaks down a lot because in the offshore, you get waves of 20 meters, like tsunami waves, and even higher, and no stationary man-made equipment can survive the load of a 20 meters wave height. Difficult to get insurance because nobody wants to pay this amount on something that breaks every few days or few months. Environmentalists are objecting it because offshore you can only connect to the ocean floor and it creates a new kind of presence on the marine environment, and it's difficult to connect to the grid because you're remote from the grid. So I think these 5 kind of problems really prevented their commercialization. So I think the solution...
But why you are the only one, maybe not the only one, but why everybody, think about offshore? You are one of the few think about onshore. It is so obvious, but why people always started with the wrong assumption?
I think that most of the people that started these companies, they're engineers. And engineers are very bright people and very smart.
They are tech savvy.
Tech savvy, but not so business savvy sometimes. Not always.
Business savvy is more important.
Sometimes. So I think that somebody that actually came outside, I'm not an engineer, I was able to think outside the box. They went to the offshore not because they were not smart. They went offshore because offshore you have the highest wave energy potential.
Wave, a lot of wave.
You don't get 20 meters on the coastline. So they said, wow, if we can capture 20 meters, what they didn't take into account that the acceptable method for energy conversion is hydraulic. Hydraulic is basically you have a piston that opens and closes according to the wave height, and that's how you produce pressure and electricity. So even if you're offshore and you have a 20 meters wave height, but your piston, let's say standard size is 5 meters, then for 5 meters of wave you're producing electricity, and 15 meters of wave is working to break your system. So what they didn't take into account, and what new studies now are showing, is that although in the offshore there's much more potential energy, the exploitable energy, the energy that you can actually take out from the offshore and nearshore, is almost the same. So I think the mistake was really going there and not really thinking it through, like the costs and so on.
Yeah, but is it because you are business savvy or tech savvy, or it's purely luck, or because you didn't have that much money? Why you decided to choose a safer route near shore?
From two reasons. The first reason was the fact that I saw that the way that they're doing just not working. Like all of them, all the companies that you check, super expensive, always broke down. Like, so I understood this is not the way, at least not right now. Second, I kind of look, if you want to be successful in renewable energy, you can look at other successful renewable industries, like wind. Wind became successful. Do you know that for the first 100 years, since the first windmill was built, they never dared to go into the offshore? The first time they went offshore was after 100 years of technical experience, of financial support. Only then they built the first offshore windmill off the coastline of Denmark. Wave energy, which is more complicated a little than wind, because you have a lot of forces, dynamic forces that are operating on your equipment, was like over optimistic. I don't know how to call it. They decided to go from the start, without having an industry, without having enough financial support, to the riskiest environment possible. Why? Start in the near shore, become a big business like wind, then go to the offshore, when you're strong already. So
yeah, that's very good. I think that too often, people get, trapped, as you say, the engineer mentality, want to solve the problem, the most technically complicated, most sophisticated, and capture the biggest wave, but they forget about the risk. Yeah. You started with something smaller, incremental, and then you succeeded. And then what about financing? You raised your $1 million, but have you raised more? Yeah. And now you're also listed on the NASDAQ. Yeah. Tell us about your subsequent round of financing.
So first of all, it was very important to us from the beginning to show that we're not capital intensive as a company, because one of the biggest fears from investors that I've met throughout my journey was the fact that, wow, wave energy, it's so expensive, it's never going to happen, because companies like Pelamis, for example, which is a Scottish offshore company, wave energy, built like a super small device of like 100 households for a price of about $150 million in development cost. That's insane. Which 100 houses will spend $150 million on electricity? So it was important to me to show that we're not capital intensive. So after the 1 million, we did 2 private fundraising rounds with one family office called Peer Valley Ventures, and then another US-based investment fund. And then after that, in 2019, we went public for the first time. We went public on Nasdaq Stockholm. We actually became the first Israeli company that ever listed on Nasdaq Stockholm. And when we were ready, because to be on the Nasdaq, you need to have a more kind of sufficient and strong team. So when we were ready and we learned how to behave, let's say, properly with all the regulations and so on, in July 2021, we uplisted from Nasdaq Stockholm to Nasdaq US, and right now we're traded on Nasdaq US under the stock symbol WAVE.
Wow, WAVE, that's an excellent name. So what are over the years, what are I guess you are still developing. So I'm curious, what are the biggest challenges? Is it a technical challenging, or is the regulatory challenge, or is it the market challenge, or is the financing challenge? What are the biggest challenges you are facing, in your opinion?
So I would say definitely the 2 biggest kind of challenges are regulatory, because wave energy is so new. Many countries don't have regulations for wave energy. By the way, in this regard, I have to positively point out Taiwan, that I just saw a presentation from the Taiwan Foreign Ministry that actually issued their goals of generating around more than 7 gigawatts, I think, of power from wave energy by the year 2050, yes. Which is amazing. But most countries, because they didn't know about wave energy, they have policies for wind, they have policies for solar, but they don't really have policies for wave. So what happens is, even in Israel, that's my home country, they didn't really know like what's wave energy. We know solar very well because we're a very sunny country. So sometimes it takes as long as 2 years to get policy in place and as little as 6 months to build the actual project. So we kind of need to make sure that these two things, that the technology readiness level and the regulations around it, they match. So, we can build as fast.
So regulation is the biggest challenge. What's the next?
The next one is definitely, I would say, financing, because right now, wave energy, similarly to solar energy or wind energy 30 and 40 years ago when it just started, it's not entitled yet to that financing, meaning that our way of financing projects are either with strategic partners, like EDF in Israel, like we didn't talk about it yet, but we just signed a deal also with Shell for our Port of Los Angeles project, and like the deal with Liantat or IKE here in Taiwan. So that's one way to fund projects. Second way is through grants. Grants are great, but they're not always available for every project that you have. So you don't want to be sitting and not building because you're waiting for a grant. And the third way to fund is equity, which is, of course, the most expensive way of funding because, you don't want to be diluting your shareholders to fund more and more assets. So it's really critical that wave energy goes in the same pathway as wind and solar in the past, that when we reach megawatt capacity and we give the bank the information that we want, and we're already in discussions with few banks that are saying that they only need 12 to 24 months of operational data from a commercial station in order to give that financing. And then basically, then you have like a big business because you can build multiple yielding assets with that financing, which makes it much easier.
Still, it is amazing. I've been helping people, companies are raising funds all my life. Your business, renewable wave energy, is a technical, technology intensive, also capital intensive. But when you started with so little, capital, where your competitors, most are, the 100 million, even $1 billion project, and then fail. And then it's purely based on the belief and the brave and the positive attitude you started. But aren't you worried that I may not have enough money? Where, how do I get a company survive? How do I grow the company big?
Not worried at all.
Not worried at all.
No, because look, our company is in a stable, we have very stable cash position. Our burn rate per year is not high because we do a lot of, as I said, we do a lot of strategic partnerships, and partners like EDF and like Shell and like other partnerships, they're usually funding or co-funding our assets, so it doesn't come straight from our balance sheet. So I feel actually very safe and very positive. And as a proof to that, look, the last time that we raised funds from people from the market was in 2021 when we IPO'd on NASDAQ in the US.
How much did you raise at that time?
Around $9 million, and the time before, $13 million. So total like $22 million.
Still, the over more than a decade, 22 million, you can last that long and then keep it going.
And the most important thing is that since July 2021, right now we're in September 2024, I never diluted my shareholders. I didn't have to come back to the market. So the company already is starting to show revenues. The company is receiving grants. So as opposed to this scary, like capital-intensive wave energy, gigantic expenses
right.
companies.
Unbelievable.
I'm completely not there. And, last year we finished our year with net loss still, but net loss is very small, like $1.8 million. And that's super small. We have a significant cash balance in the company still. We're signing more and more deals, and we're becoming more and more independent. So I think that actually financially, we're super stable, and the future is very bright.
And, it's good. Very rarely I heard companies so confident, so smooth, selling. And then, but Israel, from Israel always saying it's good to have experience of failure. They learn from failure. But you are one of the few, that I say I haven't, it seems, encountered failure. Can you share with us, are there any setbacks or failure? Now, what are the biggest setbacks, if any,
Of course, what do you mean? Along the way, you have a lot of look, the most important thing is not to have one big failure. A lot of mini failures is good. You're learning from that. Of course, that
the big failure will destroy your company, but mini failure will keep you grow, make you stronger.
Will keep me growing, will keep the team growing. Like, sometimes engineers, I don't know if you saw it in one of your business, probably yes, when they make a mistake or something, they're very scared. They don't want to admit it. So I really think that it's important to have in the company a culture of owning your mistakes, because the sooner everybody knows about it, the sooner it is being fixed. So I'm sure that I made 1,000 mistakes. I also started the company when I was 24 with no experience in engineering, but also no experience in management. So again, I'm sure there was plenty of mistakes, but I think that I learned from them.
How big is your team right now?
So right now we have about 14 people in Israel. I don't think that we
14
will...
or 14?
14,
okay.
14 people in Israel. And we have some people abroad. We have a person in Portugal and a person in China also. But I don't think that ever the team will need to become like super big, because in the end of the day, I don't want to be construction and execution company. I want to be the technology company. So we're basically planning the power stations in-house. Then we're using strategic subcontractors like Siemens, for example, to do the electrical part of the system. Or like we will using now, I guess, Liantat and IKE to produce...
Yeah, Lenda is my company, by the way, LTC, Lenda company.
Yeah, exactly. So we will use your company to produce the floaters and the pipes and the hydro cylinder, everything that is on the seaside of the power station here locally in Taiwan. So for that regard, I don't think that we're capital intensive, because we're just planning this. We're choosing the subcontractors, and we're kind of, supervising that everything is done properly and integrating the power station.
Understood. So you have the control the IP, proprietary IP,
exactly.
And then it's like a project company. You supervise
exactly.
and manage
so
many projects.
We need more project managers, but you don't really need to have construction people, steel workers.
Understood. You don't need to build that in-house. You just
yes.
The subcontractor.
Exactly.
And then you expand internationally. You have a home in projects in Israel, in Portugal, in Gibraltar, and now in the United States, and now in Taiwan, working with us. Share with us, your experience in different continent, different countries. I'm sure they are different, but what is your observation, in Europe, United States, Asia? So can you see the differences?
So Europe, I think, is very important for wave energy, because in Europe, for some reason, they made the most kind of legislation, grants, and regulatory support for wave energy. So for us, Europe is key focus, because we see the advantage of working there. Plus, we have a key strategic partner, EDF, to help us penetrate the European market. In the United States was kind of lagging behind in terms of policy for wave energy. But, in the recent years, they came up with the Inflation Reduction Act that gave a lot of support and subsidies for renewable energy. The DOE, the Department of Energy of the United States, just published a new grant for giving around $100 and something million for wave energy construction. We got the first project there in the Port of Los Angeles with collaboration from Shell. So the United States...
Is the grant from Inflation Reduction Act, or it's separate?
I'm not sure if it falls under it, because the DOE does get funding from the Inflation Reduction Act, so I'm not sure, but they just published it recently, the letter of intent for this grant. So I don't have full information yet. It will come later this month, and then we will see. But it's a very exciting opportunity that they're giving it specifically to wave energy only. And as part of the new kind of awakening of the United States and excitement about wave energy, I also was able to draft a new law that passed in California by Governor Newsom called SB 605 for promoting wave energy in California, which is very, very important. As we said, regulatory is a big barrier. So if a legislation comes hand in hand with construction, it really helps. And right now, Congresswoman Annette Barragon is coming up with federal legislation to appropriate $1 billion in the United States for wave energy specifically.
$1 billion for wave energy?
For wave energy.
I got to check it out. Wow.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I can send you the link. And the good thing is that we work closely with all these people, with Annette Barragon, for example, and help her draft the legislation. So we make sure that, the things that are needed to be there to support wave energy for real are in that legislation.
Are you more positive about the United States than Europe? Because U.S. is lagging behind. Of course, they have a lot of money. They throw money at the renewable energy.
They were lagging behind, but look, they're catching up. And what happens big in the US usually happens big everywhere. So I think the US is a core market as well for eco-wave power, especially that we're also publicly traded there. So, when you open a power station in the port of Los Angeles, which is one of the largest ports in the United States, together with a partner like Shell, that's a big deal,
But aren't you concerned about the U.S. politics, because Biden is very supportive of that. But if Trump wins, the Trump doesn't believe in renewable energy, and the whole, that he may cut off the renewable energy or the grant, the budget, that there's uncertainty. So are you a little bit concerned about the change of policy, if any?
First of all, it's important to say that our technology is cost efficient. So we're building it already kind of in advance, no matter who is the president there, to be able to stand on its own. Because you can't build on subsidies or on grants for the long term. It's good to have it in the short term, especially when you're a new industry. If you can provide your investors with faster returns, it's good. But we're not we won't live on that or die on these subsidies. Regarding Trump and Biden, that's an actually interesting question. And my answer usually surprises people. Look, on the one hand, Biden did an amazing job for renewable energy. The Inflation Reduction Act is his initiative. The legislation that is happening now by Congresswoman Annette Barragon is a federal legislation of, a Democratic Party that is currently there. So the legislation, the funding that come with it is definitely a positive, is a big plus on what the Biden administration did. On the other hand, you have Trump, like you said, that he took out the United States from the climate Paris Agreement and so on. But for some reason, when Trump is in power, and again, I don't want to go into politics, the economy in the US does better. At least it did better during his first term. And just from the mere fact that the economy does better, it becomes easier to raise funds, the companies become worth more money on the stock market. So there's pluses and minuses to everything. So actually, it's very funny and strange to say, because people are sure that, and maybe he is, I don't know him personally, people are sure that Trump is kind of the opposer of renewable energy. But if you're looking at, again, during COVID, during his first cadential, during his first kind of time, renewable energy companies were on fire. The valuations on the NASDAQ were a lot higher than they are right now. So again, I don't know if it's connected, I don't know if it's timing or not, but I see positive in both kind of individuals.
Interesting. You're the first that I heard, have this observation. What about Asia? Because now we are cooperating in Asia. Actually, you started off in Asia. That was when I approached you more than 3 years ago. That was that initially at China, and then later you're not talking with Taiwan and also Japan. I know maybe. So talk with us. You seem to have little involvement with Asia, but I hope in the future Asia will be more on your strategic roadmap.
So even right now, Asia is very much on the strategic roadmap. I think that Asia has massive potential for wave energy. You have locations like Taiwan, like China that has a very large coastline, like the Philippines. You have a lot of locations in Asia that really need the electricity and really have a lot of natural resources. I do believe that starting with Taiwan, doing the first power station, wave energy power station in Asia, in Taiwan, is a kind of a very important step for us, because I feel that there's a very good relationship between Taiwan and Israel. There's very good friendship.
Yeah, all countries are also very similar. Exactly. Small countries surrounded by big nations. Exactly. And always feeling hostile environment, exactly. Both technically strong.
But I think the hostile environment makes us much more tech savvy. Absolutely. The more you get pressure, the more you become creative. So
we got to cooperate more, Taiwan and Israel.
Exactly. And I think the advantage also that I see in Taiwan is because it's a smaller country, like population-wise, than other countries around it. You're like 23 million. 23 million, yeah. I think you have more flexibility. Like it might be like faster to, move processes, do regulations, work positively with the government. So I do believe that Taiwan, with its wave resources, with its very competent and very smart population, very impressive governments with very impressive targets for renewable energy, can become kind of the most innovative hub in Asia
Absolutely.
for wave energy.
That is what we are, our government is determined to do that. And the new president, the William Lai, he just announced the sort of a second phase of the energy policy, and it's going to focus on the new areas of renewable energy, thermal, including nuclear, and then the ocean energy, specifically wave energy. So we are very excited. And the second thing is Taiwan. We also have very strong manufacturing capability. So I'm glad that in our collaboration, we are able to manufacture through localization some of the equipment, the parts. It was through your the IP, we produce locally. So hopefully in the future we can using Taiwan as a hub, expanding to other places in Asia. But let's share with us, how do you manage you're a small company and you have a global ambition. How do you manage? I know you now have a new headquarters in the United States. How do you manage, so many things going on?
So basically, we kind of split the operations of the company. As you know, Israel is very tech savvy. We have amazing engineers, super smart. So in Israel, we're kind of turning the company into a technical hub. So there we will do all the R&D, the engineering, the execution. So it will become a hub mostly with engineers. In the US office, the US people, they're very good salespersons, marketing, investors relations, and so on. So there right now we started the hiring process to have kind of the sales, marketing team, and so on.
Where's US headquarters based?
Miami.
But why not in Los Angeles? Your team was Los Angeles, but you are on the other side in Miami.
Because Los Angeles is where we're having the power station. The office was decided upon because Miami is really kind of having an entrepreneurial awakening, I would call it. Florida really wants to attract entrepreneurs. Jeff Bezos just went to live in Miami, and a lot of very high net worth individuals are moving their businesses into Miami. They did very good tax incentives for entrepreneurs. They're giving a lot of support. So I think Miami is a comfortable hub. It's not far away it's very central. It's 3 hours from New York. It's 5 hours from LA. So it enables us to build a kind of a
but Miami, sometimes they have the hurricane, they have the flood. But for wave energy, for what you do is maybe that's okay with water, but people are worried about Miami, maybe with all the climate change, Miami gonna be, under the water.
I don't know. So for now, I'm 2 years there. Nothing went under the water. If it goes, we will take care of it. For now, we're good.
Okay. So, in the future, now you're managing. How do you split? To share with us, how do you split your time, between Israel and United States, and I guess you are traveling all over the places. I heard that you are also going to India. So how do you split your time? How do you manage your time?
Yeah. So I travel extensively, as you said. Most of my travel are to the locations of the company's offices, like the US and Israel. And in between, of course, I go visit our project sites, like in Portugal, which is a very important project for us. It's the first time we're building commercial scale, megawatt scale wave energy device. Taiwan, for example, which is a very important strategic partnership for us because it's our first step into Asia, and we see that we have a lot of interest in Asia. We were contacted by Marubeni in Japan, by Adani in India. So there's already very big players in Asia that want to work with EcoWave Power. So for us, really, to make the first step here in Taiwan properly is key to unlocking the whole kind of Asian region. So everywhere that we have project, Port of Los Angeles, as I said, Portugal, Taiwan, every place that we work on project or promoting project, I will be there. It's important for me. It's key for my company. And, I learned to kind of work also on the road. So every time I have some free time, I'm doing my emails, I'm doing Zoom calls. Right now, I think post-COVID era, the world became very connected. Unfortunately, there is not so much meetings in person, which I think really help build closer relationship and trust. But the Zoom and Teams and things like that really enable us to communicate efficiently, even when you're located at a completely different country or time zone. So
yeah, you reminded me of this movie star, the Wonder Woman. She's also from Israel.
Yeah, Gal Gadot.
Gadot. Yeah. So you are the business world.
You know what her name
Wonder
means?
Woman.
You know what her name means, by the way? Gal. What it means in Hebrew?
No.
It means wave.
Oh, really?
Gal is wave. You see, so good comparison.
Oh, interesting.
And you know what Inna means?
And I don't know, Inna.
No, Inna is a name in Greek, actually. I don't know why my parents chose it. And it means running water.
Running water. So this is a fate, the fate,
exactly.
Fate. You must, the water, everything linked together,
exactly.
From your days you were born in Ukraine, Israel. But I want to ask you a sensitive question, if you don't mind, you are from, Ukraine, the war, lingering on Ukraine, Russia, now it's getting very ugly, and Israel, now, of course, what happened in Gaza, now is things attacking Lebanon, and not to mention Iran, it seems to be fighting enemies with it's not six-day wars. I heard it's a six-front war, all over the places, under what keep you resilient under such great uncertainty? I know you are maybe one of the few exceptions, but I heard there are a lot of companies, even startup companies in Israel, went into trouble, business the bad, the GDP decline, all because of the war. Tell us the impact of the war to Israel in general and to your company or to your management of the company, if any.
So in Israel, look, there's no war that has no impact. So of course, a country that has been in a war for 1 year now, we got attacked by Hamas on the 7th of October, then by Hezbollah on the 8th of October, then by the Houthi in Yemen continuously, and like from Iran at some point directly. So we got really attacked on many fronts. So of course, a lot of the financial resources of the country are going towards warfare, towards like equipment and so on. A lot of the CEOs of the Israeli companies, they're not only impressive CEOs, but they're also very impressive commanders. So they were taken to reserve duty, and they're the pilots that are actually going and killing the terrorists. So of course, I don't think it's surprising that many companies have went into not so good financial situation. Plus, sometimes investors are a little scared or a lot scared from this situation. So they're saying, wow, I'm going to invest in this company, and tomorrow the CEO is going to go to war. Who's going to manage the company? But I think Israelis are robust, are resilient, are passionate, and nothing can kill the passion of this little country. We are truly a startup nation. So the CEOs are going at night, they're going with the airplanes to kill Hassan Nasrallah, which just happened 2 days ago, and in the morning they wake up and they go to be the CEO of their business, which is very unique. And the reason for that is that the Jewish people, the Israeli people, they know that, Muslims, they have many countries. Christians have many countries. Israel has one country. So, whatever happens, you have a home, you have where to go, and we will never give up on our home. And the economy will recover. It is not the first war, and it is not the worst war that Israel had in its short lifetime. It's a very young country still. We know how to recover. We know how to manage financially. And regarding EcoWave Power, I will tell you that we are lucky because I do believe with my whole heart that technology has no borders. And everybody, even kind of our enemies on paper, I would call it, even them, they want good technology. Everybody needs energy and fresh water and smart semiconductors. Like everybody needs the smart technologies. And look, we were attacked by Hamas. I'll give a specific example. On the 7th of October. On the 10th of October...
where were you at that time? In Israel or overseas?
So I just landed 1 day before. I just landed and I couldn't sleep till 6 a.m. and 6:30 started the first alarm. So I just fell asleep and I started hearing like non-stop, alarms from the rockets. And it was very scary. It was unpleasant. Our army was not ready. Like I don't think we expected it. So we were caught by surprise, but we caught up fast. And I think that slowly and safely our population is regaining its trust of the army and of the government, which I think is very, very important to run a country like Israel. And in the remarks of EcoWave Power, as I said, I believe we're very lucky because everybody wants good technology. And on the 7th of October, we were attacked, and one of the rumors or the news was that Qatar was one of the financiers of the attack. They funded Hamas efforts to attack us. And the funny thing is that on the 10th of October, I personally got contacted by the Qatar National Energy Company asking for a project. So no matter, I guess, how much they dislike us, kind of openly, in the end of the day, they do business. And I want to tell you that all or most Muslim countries that you can think about that kind of hate us on paper are in my mailbox. So it shows something.
Yeah, it is amazing, just like, the example you just mentioned, you fight on the other hand, the military war on the other hand, you fight the business war, the corporate war, on the other hand. And, but you are, unlike, I know a lot of Israeli entrepreneurs, most of them are male. They serve in the military. They start in this, 1884, whatever, there's a number, for that particular unit. But you are a woman. But I have to admit, with all due respect, I'm one of the very few female entrepreneurs from Israel. Why is that? Why is Israel's innovative startup nation, but it's all male, the very few females?
We do have females, and quite a lot of females in different fields. I think in my field, specifically the energy industry, it is very male-dominated. According to Ernst Young, like 95% of the CEOs and the management positions in energy companies worldwide, 95% are men, 5% are women. So it's not very rare that I'm the only woman in the room. I've even been in London in a conference of a famous magazine. I don't want to offend them, so I will not say the name. And I came to the room and I was the only woman there. And the moderator of the panel said, Inna, please don't take videos or pictures so they don't see you're the only woman, so it doesn't go. So I'm used to be the only woman. I do think there's many impressive other women in Israel. Maybe some are less known, some are more known. Like you have Kira Radinsky, for example, which is a famous entrepreneur that her company got acquired by, I don't remember if it was eBay or something like that. So we do have, again, Israel is a small country, maybe they're not known. With the time, I hope to see more and more women that are kind of joining the entrepreneurial fields because, I don't think there's anything that we cannot do as women.
Right. And how would you characterize you as one of the very rare, female innovative entrepreneur? How would you characterize your, we all know your personality, but your leadership style, your management, how is it different from other people? How would you characterize yourself?
I think what really helped me in kind of my entrepreneurial journey, I would say, and in doing business is not giving up. Because if you're a male or a female, you hear a lot of no. I'll even tell you like a personal story. The government of Israel invested 50%, the energy industry, the energy ministry invested 50% of our project in Israel. And here, an impressive woman I'm giving you, the chief scientist of the energy ministry was back then a woman, Dr. Bracha Khalaf. And I came to her, and again, I guess she's not used to seeing a woman, came to her and to like a big committee that is deciding if to give funding to new technologies. And I said, look, we want to build in Jaffa Port, we need this amount of funding. And she looked at me and she said, no. I don't know why, but no. Then I came for the second time and she said, look, Israel has wind, Israel has solar, why do we need wave? Like, we have enough. Okay. And she said no, basically, by the answer. And I came a third time, persistence, and I said, listen, Bracha, I need the funding, I want to build the project. And she said, take the money, just go away. Seriously, so persistence work. Because sometimes somebody doesn't know your industry. It doesn't mean that your idea is not good. Or they don't know the industry, they don't know you as an entrepreneur, they're not familiar enough, they don't have funds in this round. The most important thing is really not to give up at any point.
Very good. What is your objective, in the near term or the medium term, in the next 1 year, 3 years, you have certain objective to achieve, maybe a new markets, new partners. Can you share with us?
So I think our main objective is to penetrate our core markets and start commercialization. So as I said before, Europe with EDF, great strategic partner. Port of Los Angeles, United States with Shell, great strategic partner, and Taiwan, Asia, with IKE or Liantat.
Ike is a subsidiary of a Liantat company. Ike, yeah, the name sounded like Eco Wave, so we make the name IKE, 以科,
So in each region like this that we're interested in, I really believe that I made collaborations with partners that I feel comfortable with and that feel comfortable with me. And I think it's key for success. Because when you feel comfortable with each other and you trust each other, no matter what problem or delay occurs, both parties are on the same boat. They have the same interest. So I think that we're in the right path since we have the commercial project coming in on Portugal. We have the first pilot here in Taiwan. We have the working power station in Israel. We have the pilot in the port of Los Angeles. So we're penetrating all the regions that we're interested in while building also the first commercial scale power station in the history of Israel and in the history of the world. No wave energy company ever built commercial. And I think it's a golden opportunity for us to prove that wave energy does not only have to be cost efficient and reliable and insurable and environmentally friendly and easily connected to the grid, but wave energy can become profitable. Because no matter how impactful is your industry, in the end of the day, if it's not making money, it's very difficult to promote.
Do you think that it is feasible now with the cost coming down or with the volume has reached to a point of profitability, or we still have a long way to go?
I don't think we have a long way to go. Our technology is modular. So basically, if you build 1 megawatt or 20 megawatts, you kind of build it in the same way. It's more floaters, but still the same conversion units that are attached to those floaters. So in our financial forecast and calculation, once you reach a size of 20 megawatt, which is a normal size for renewable energy plant, our capex, our cost per each 1 megawatt decreases to as low as $1.5 million, which is much cheaper than a pilot would cost. So once we're starting to build commercial, you're already going into the profitable kind of path.
Absolutely. We certainly hope just, in Taiwan alone, we can reach the goal of 20 kilo. We started with 1 kilo, 1 kilowatt, the goal, but 20 is the ultimate objective. We are 20 MW, megawatt, is our end objective. So are there anything you would like to share with our government? You obviously have a lot of people you're dealing with from anywhere, Japan, Qatar, everywhere. But any recommendation to our government that you would like to share with us?
Look, first of all, I want to commend the Taiwanese government. I think they're being really true pioneers by the fact that so early kind of on in the journey, they decided to come out with specific policies for wave energy. This definitely makes our pathway much smoother, I think, for both companies to work here in Taiwan. And look, I don't have any recommendation. I would kind of maybe give advice from my experience is just really to pay attention on kind of making maybe easy and comfortable licensing procedures, like removing some of the bureaucratic barriers, at least for the first pilots and the first wave energy stations. Because look, like for example, for the first 1 megawatt we're doing in Portugal, we didn't have to submit environmental survey. When you're building 20 megawatt there, you already have to do that. So kind of the government did this law there in order to make it easier for entrepreneurs, for new technologies to deploy. So I think the government of Taiwan, if it can do the same way, it will be great because, again, in the beginning, every new industry that comes to a new region, it's struggling. It's a new culture, it's new laws, it's new regulations. So as much bureaucracy that the government can remove will be much better, I think, for everybody, and then the industry will start running much faster.
That's a very good advice. I'm sure, our government, I will ensure, our government also pay attention to this. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very glad today we have the honor of inviting the Wonder Woman, from Israel, Inna Braverman. Brave, your name, Braverman, so yeah, brave Wonder Woman to come to Taiwan to share with us her experience in eco-wave power. And we are also delighted that company, the company that I serve as a chairman, have cooperation with eco-wave power. And then together we're gonna build a renewable energy, wave energy in Taiwan and using Taiwan as a base to expanding that into Asia. We are very honored to work with Inna and EWP, and I assure you that I will contribute mobilize all the resources to make it work. In the future, you'll probably more talk about your proud achievement in Asia, or specifically in Taiwan, as much as you talk about Europe and United States.
If I can add something, thank you for your kind words, and I'm sure that eco-wave power in Taiwan will be a success story. And, I read a little bit about you. I know you personally. I know that everything that CY touches is a success story. So wave energy will become as well.
Okay, so together, Inna, CY, we're going to make it work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We come to the end of the program. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.